Okay, we're ready for our speaker, our very own infamous John Brill. He graduated from Howe Military Academy in '48. He attended Purdue University with, I got a degree, BS degree in '57. He was a corporate officer for 40 years. He served in the U.S. Air Force and Indiana Air National Guard for 23 years. His duties, he was a fighter pilot, flight commander, and instructor pilot. FAA commercial pilot with instrument, multi, and single land. The equipment flown, you probably know this, I don't know these planes. First pilot for a T-6G, T-28A, T-33A, B-25, I know that one, F-86A, and F, F-80, F-94C, F-84F, and numerous light aircraft. He has flown a total of 10,000 hours. And his topic today is Cold War fighter pilot. Before John comes in, I want to introduce you to Sparky.
Off we go into the wild blue yonder, gliding high into the sun. Here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Atom boys, give it a gun. Down we dive, starting a flame from under. Off with one, check on the run. We hear the flame or go down in a flame. Ain't nothing but shot to you and Air Force. Nothing but shot to you and Air Force.
Yay, John!
Well, thank you, Sparky, for a great song. I enjoyed that. Okay, let's pretend for a minute here, for the next 5 minutes, that we're over in Korea, and we're right where the Yalu River, Yalu River goes into the Yellow Sea. I'm flying along in an F-86F aircraft at 35,000 feet, and I get a bunch of noise in the aircraft, and the MiG 15 was behind me, fired 20 millimeters up my tailpipe. My instrument panel lit up like a pinball machine, and boy, fire warning light was on. Now it's time to eject. Now to eject, you got to get your head back against the headrest. Then you have to get your feet in the stirrups. You have to get your arms in the armrests, both left and right, because if you don't, you might lose an arm. Some of these early ejections. You lift, we're ejecting now. We lift the left armrest, there goes the canopy. Then we lift the right armrest and expose the trigger, kind of like this. You squeeze the trigger, and whammo, out you go. About minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. And the first thing you do, this is the whole ejection. Now, this is back in the 50s. You got to undo your seat belt. You got to kick away from your seat. Then you got to reach back here and pull your green apple. That's the green apple. That activates oxygen from this little tank here into your mask so that you don't pass out on the way down and forget to pull your D ring, because that's not very healthy. You hit the ground or the water about 127 miles per hour, and that's enough to break about every bone in your body. So let's say we're drifting down in the chute now. If you're in a combat zone, it's prudent to free fall out of the combat area before you deploy your chute. But in this case, we deployed at a high altitude. And I'm going to deploy the chute right now. I got to move over here so I can pull my D ring. Now, this is the D ring. And if you can hang on to it, it makes a nice souvenir. But we'll figure we lost it. Okay, we're drifting down. I've already called in. I got Jolly Green Giant coming to pick me up. out of the water. Now, it's best to hit the water because you get picked up a lot quicker as opposed to being over enemy territory. So as you're letting down, first thing you got to do is undo. Let me get my gloves off. You've got to pull this, get rid of this strap right here, if I can get it. Because if you don't, and you go up to Mae West, you crush your chest, and that's not good either. So we're coming down now. You got to be careful when you open or pull your Mae West. You got to be have your toes in the water, because you can jump out. You can be 1,000 feet up and think you're close to the water, and fall 1,000 feet. That's not good either. So as soon as your toes hit the water, now wait a minute. Before that, we're in our parachute. Let's get rid of these. And see, I'm sitting on the strap right below me, so I can hop out of my chute, so it doesn't come down on top of me and drown me, like it's happened to some of the pilots. Okay, just as soon as my toes hit the water, I blow up my Mae West. And hopefully I got a little wind, and the wind blows the chute away from me and doesn't come down on top of me. Okay, I'm going to unload my chute. Now stand by a minute until I get a few things off, then I'll tell you about this stuff. Well, let me just kind of explain some of this stuff to you. The chopper picked me up, took me back to the base, so I'm safe and in one piece. This is a Teflon helmet, and this is what we had back in the 50s. And instead of, we had just goggles that had a strap that went around it for our head protection. Now they've got really neat automatic stuff. You can actually, in modern aircraft, bail out on the ground. You got a rocket engine that shoots you up in the air, and you can deploy your chute safely on the ground. If you're bailing out at altitude, everything's automatic. You can be knocked cold coming out of the aircraft, and you can wake up in a cornfield in one piece. Everything's automatic. But back in my era, it wasn't that way, Pete. Okay, this is a Mae West, as you can see. This is from North Central Airlines. I bought it, I didn't steal it. I have on a .38 special pistol, and this was our total firepower if we went down enemy territory. And this, no, it's inert. It's not loaded. This is a typical flying suit that we had, back in the 50s. And this is a G suit. This is Tactical Air Command, Air National Guard, and this G suit's very useful. I don't think Dave wore them in B-26s. But anyway, when you're doing a fighter pass and you're pulling about 4 Gs coming in on your target, you plug this into the pressurization system. This bladder blows up, it squeezes your stomach. Down below it squeezes your legs, so the blood stays up in your chest, but mainly in your head, so that you don't gray out and don't pass out, because it's not healthy either to fly into your target. Okay, I've got boots, typical flying boots that we had there back in the 50s. Now, any questions on the equipment, and I'll get back and tell you some war stories. Hey, Brad?
Yeah. How much does the total outfit weigh? Did you ever weigh everything? How much every?
Well, yeah, they probably, I don't know, Denise brought my parachute in, so I always thought it's pretty heavy. I can't hardly carry the darn thing. She brought it right in and sat it down, so I suppose you're looking 250 pounds, I imagine, with all the stuff you have on.
Who repacks the parachute now?
Pardon?
Who repacks that parachute? You just pop that on the floor.
Who's going to pack it?
Yeah, repack it.
These skydivers up here at Frankfurt. And they charged me $20, the dirty rats. So stand by a minute, I'll get behind the rostrum. I might say something about Todd Alves there. He really takes good care of my automobiles. But it was his father that was in Korea over in Japan. And not Todd, but Todd was in the Army. How many years did you serve? 4 years. Well, how do you become a fighter pilot? What's your motivation? When Todd's dad, Bob Alves, and I grew up in Zionsville. 1935, we arrived at Zionsville, and we had a movie house there. And this movie house cost 10 cents for the movie. And my dad had given me 11 cents, penny for candy at the drugstore, Auburn drugstore, and 10 cents for the movie. Well, in this movie, there was playing a guy by the name of Errol Flynn, if you remember him. He was a World War I fighter pilot and running around with his Spad shooting down all these German aircraft. I thought that was really neat. I saw that movie 7 times. I decided at age 8 I wanted to be a fighter pilot someday. Now, my father was a fighter pilot back in World War I. He flew Thomas More Scouts, SC-5s, Jennies, Spads, and he was actually flying in 1940 out of Fort Harrison. He was 49 years old then. You know where the Finance Center is? That was Show Field. And he was flying out of there in a BT-9C made by North American. He got that rascal in a spin down near Acton, Indiana, and just couldn't get it quite out of spin soon enough. He had a passenger with him that he got out by about 2,000 feet up. He made it, and my dad broke the spin, hit on his nose and wheels, but he was fatally injured due to a broken neck and some severe burns. And after that, my mom was receiving some letters from the FAA about naming Metro Airport out here, Indianapolis Municipal Airport, Whitewater Brill Airport. And I thought that was kind of cool. Well, my dad was killed in 1940. A year and a half later was Pearl Harbor, and we had a lot of heroes, obviously, many of them from Pearl Harbor, one of which was Weir Cook, who was in the service club, and of course it's been named after Weir Cook. I went to school 60 in Indianapolis after attending 4 years out at public schools in Zionsville. Then I wound up going to Howe Military instead of Shortridge for my 4 years of high school, which proved to help me out a lot later on when I was in the Air Force. I went on to Purdue, graduated in 57, Kappa Sig fraternity, and Kappa Sig's in here? Sam Armstrong, Pete's brother, not Armstrong, Sam Dunbar, Pete's brother was going to be here. He's Kappa Sig. But Pete's brother, named Bill Dunbar, came back to the fraternity house at Purdue. Had been flying F-86s in Korea. Tell me all about it. And I thought, oh man, this is cool. Well, I got to get into this thing. So that helped motivate me to get into the pilot training program. Now, my brother was a brigadier general. He was program director on the A-10 aircraft over at Wright-Patterson. He told me, I was just a civilian, wait till you get a class assignment, because if you go in as an airman, that's where you might stay. So I waited till I got the class assignment and went into the Air Force for class 53E down at Bainbridge, Georgia, where we flew T-6Gs. I'm going to pass out some pictures here of the aircraft as I explain them so you can look at them. We got 130 hours in that T6G, and we had to log 75 spins. And I logged about probably twice that because I was wanted to be a real pro at spin recovery, because that's the way my father was killed. In fact, out at Nellis, we had the F-86F. So I actually wanted to spin that. It wasn't in the curriculum, but the Dash 1 had the spin recovery techniques, of which I read. And I was up on a solo mission, took this rascal up to 30,000 feet, put it into a spin to the right, stick all the way back, full rudder, and spun 6 turns, recovered at 15,000, just like the book said. And it was very fast recovery. So I went back up again to 30,000 and kicked it to spin to the left, and it went round and around, let's see, about 6 times, recovered at 15,000 feet, and I just took my hands off everything. And it came out on its own. So it shows you how dynamically stable that North American F-86F model was. Now, it was tricky when you landed it. It did not have those slats that gravity brings out at slow airspeed. It had a 3/6 extension of the leading edge. So when you come around final, you got to keep that boy 130 knots. If you got below 130 knots, it tend to flip and go in on the canopy. And that's another thing that was not healthy. I was so concerned about washing out in the pilot training program that I wound up number 1 in my class. So I way overkilled. And after Bainbridge, we went to Bryan Air Force Base, Texas, where we flew T-28A models. There's some pictures coming around. And the T-33. T-33 is just a 2-seat F-80. And that's our first experience with jet aircraft. After we graduated from pilot training, we had 250 hours. We thought we knew a lot, but we didn't know anything about flying, very little. But anyway, the Top Gun schools at Nellis Air Force Base, where we transitioned in these F-86F models. And the runway, it was hot out there in the summertime, we had to start flying about 5 a.m. because the runway was too hot. We couldn't get off the runway. Anyway, I was taught how to shoot down MiGs by Boots Blase. Now maybe some of you heard of him, Fred C. Blase Jr., Boots Blase they call him. And he got that nickname when he was a kid. Had shot down 9 MiGs and 1 Yak, so he had 10 kills to his credit. So he was back at Nellis as our instructor. So I tell you, my parents always told me you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I listen twice as much as you speak. I really have it all backwards, you know. But this time I had it right. I kept my mouth shut and listened to Boots. Will say, teach us how to shoot down MiGs. And we had, the accident rate at Nellis was terrible. There was one crash after another. Now, Jimmy, you wake up now. I got one guy going to sleep here. But he's a retired military colonel, and he's old enough, he's earned a rank. We ought to call the place to attention and see what he does. Well, anyway, every man a tiger. We had 4 lieutenant colonels, believe it or not, killed in the same day in mid-air collisions. You know, of course, that's applied tactics, they called it. Dogfighting, plain word. And we fought to get behind somebody, behind our opponent, so you could shoot him down. So you get into luff berries, and you get into split asses and Cuban 8s and scissors, a lot of the scissors, throwing your speed boards out and jockeying with the throttle so you could get behind the guy, fire your weapon, which gun camera in this case, because you could see you shot him down. So we practiced that an awful lot. Well, anyway, mid-air collisions were kind of frequent. The Air Force was really on Nellis for a bad accident rating. Now, another thing, this is great. Let's see how my timing is. Oh boy, I got cut short. I'll summarize this thing so I don't keep you here too long. But booming was something new then. Buzzing was a court-martial offense. Now we could get an F-86 up to about 40,000 feet, get a big head of steam, point it straight down with full power. You take your A4 gun sight, the bottom diamond, you put it on the casino, on the strip you want to boom, and it booms. In other words, you come down from 40,000 to about 32,000, boom, there goes the shock wave, so you just bust Mach 1, get a little wing roll in the F-86, and your Mach meter goes to about 1.03. So you're just barely through. So you got full power, straight down with gravity pulling you, but the air thickens around 27,000 and you're forced subsonic again. But what subsonic, each time you go supersonic to subsonic, you throw out all these shock waves. And the people down on the strips, they call into the fire department, hey, we got an earthquake out here on the strip. So we used to play with that, you know, but the Air Force had to pay out a few claims, and they made it a court-martial offense. So we had to quit booming, except in Death Valley. Now, when I was out there, how many people have been to Las Vegas? Probably everybody. It's kind of expensive now, but when I was there, the food, a tremendous smorgasbord at midnight, was free, and the shows were all free. And but now you really pay for it. In '53, when we were going through training there, the Flamingo, if you remember the Flamingo, it's on the east side of the road in the strip, was the last one out. It was sand and sagebrush clear out to McCarran Airport. Now it's built up, you know, way beyond the airport. Now, Bugsy, one of Al Capone's guys that Dave was talking about one of the other meetings, Bugsy Siegel was the guy behind building that Flamingo Club. So that was built with some of the Chicago outworld outlaws. Okay, now, when we finish training, I'll hit this. If I go over a little past 3, is it okay? I'll try to summarize the rest of it here. They signed the truce in summer of '53. So we were all combat ready to go to Korea. Well, we all went there, Defense Command, and I wound up at Otis Air Force Base, which was kind of good duty on the beaches there at Otis. You know, I was young and single then, and stupid and dumb. But we'd take our crash helmets and put them in the back of our Olds '88 automobiles and cruise those beaches. And boy, those girls would come up there to the window, you fly jets out at the base? Yeah, honey, get in. I don't worry about stuff like that now. That's way back yonder. Okay, let me just describe a typical mission to you. We were in the 32nd Air Division sector on Cape Cod, and we had an area we were responsible for. And the airliners, when they came in from Europe, had to check in at the Air Defense Identification Zone, which was a couple miles out to sea. If they were off more than 5 minutes on their ETA or 20 miles on their true course, we scrambled after them. The ground radar at North Turl, they circled around about better than 200 miles with a radar, would punch a button. In the alert hangar, off would go the horn. We had an alert hangar at Otis that had the doors open both ways, so you fired up your jet right in the hangar, and as soon as the horn went off, you went down the stairs, jumped in the airplane, you had a couple of guys help get you strapped in, started the aircraft, the radio was on, took a high-speed taxiway, angle about 30 degrees the runway, kick in that old line up the center line, kick in that burner, and away you went. That F-94C, there's a picture coming around, had a real afterburner in it. It went off like a howitzer cannon if you were outside the aircraft. As soon as we broke ground, cleaned up our garbage, called tower for a scramble order, they'd tell us climb 030 Angels 12. That's 12,000 feet. That's where our target was. And then we'd get close to the target. The guy behind us, we had another guy named John too, was my radar observer. He'd lock onto the target, and we would, all I had to do, you know, it was pretty easy, had a scope about this big around, and they had a circle that got right down, it got down about the size of a quarter. There was a dot in this circle. All I had to do is adjust the flight controls to keep that dot in the circle. And then the intervalometer was set up properly. All 48 rockets went simultaneously. And any one of them would have blown the wing off of that Russian bomber coming after us. But I mean, salvo 48, you're going to get it killed. So our plane was designed, 4 sets of speed boards. We'd drop our speed boards, full power to idle, land, reload, rockets, and refuel, and go back and get another one. So the Russians, they had subs out there. We could see them once in a while checking us out, and they knew darn well that we were keeping our coastal identification zones guarded pretty well. And we had about 2,000 outfits across the eastern perimeter of the country and the northern part of the country, plus 2 squadrons up in Thule, Greenland, to shoot down the Russian bombers should they come. But they never came. So this is a typical Cold War fighter pilot. I didn't have to get shot down. I didn't have to shoot anybody else down. So I really didn't do much at all. But I had a hell of a lot of fun. Now, one thing about, you remember, not too long ago, there was a Korean airliner, 747, shot down, got into Russian airspace. And incidentally, that Russian pilot I heard that shot down that airliner with, I don't know, 300 or 400 people, quit flying. It affected him so much psychologically. He grounded himself. But anyway, I don't know what they had to identify, but let's say we're tooling along and we get a call from Amazon Control to engage. Engage means shoot the rascal down. We had these CAC-29 authentication tables that were, the code was changed every 15 minutes, so it was impossible to crack. In other words, we're told to engage. So I holler back, we authenticate Romeo, Juliet. And if they don't come back with the right 2 letters, we know we're being jammed. And so we don't follow their instructions. So that was kind of a fail-safe method, so we wouldn't be shooting down any more Korean-type airliners.
Was that word fail-safe used much back then?
The what now?
That word fail-safe? Sure. Was that used a lot back then when you were flying?
What did he say?
The term fail-safe, it
Fa-
was used back in the old days.
Yeah, we had that APX-6. Remember, we squawked 1, 2, or 3. That was an early one. And then these CAC-29 tables were pretty hard to crack because they changed every 15 minutes. So you had a whole book full of letters.
They did use that word.
So it was a pretty hard one. But actually, well, anyway, out of Otis, there was an interesting, no, we're getting there, getting close 3. If anybody's got to leave, just bug out. I won't be offended. Chappie James was the first black guy to get 4 stars. We became, good friends. His last job, he ran NORAD out in Cheyenne Mountain, was his 4-star command. Anyway, he was major then, our squadron commander. And he was kind of proud of his pilots, and he even had these Southern pilots back in they were prejudiced as heck. He even won them over. I mean, he was a brilliant man in psychology. He knew how to deal with people so that they would, those pilots, they said, we're going to take off, fly to the moon. We'd do it, we'd try it. But anyway, he had us down to the Herb Schreiner show. Remember Herb Schreiner? Yeah. And had to all stand up and be recognized. I was in Alert one time, and up comes Chappie James, Daniel James Jr., with a black guy behind him, looked pretty hefty. And he says, John, we were kind of on first name basis way back then. John, come over here. I want you to meet Joe Louis. So I, shook Joe Lewis's hand. He had a pretty good sized hand, too. He used them well, too, in boxing. Okay, let's see. One thing here. Okay, I'm going to eliminate some. I chased 2 UFOs. Believe it, 2 UFOs? I was out over the North Atlantic tooling around, and ground radar called me up and said, hey, there's something going real fast out here, then it slows up, and it's going like a bat out of hell and it slows up. So you want to intercept it? Well, yeah, I'll try it when he slows up. So they vectored me in, and I was about a couple hundred miles out to sea, and I got close enough, and I saw kind of a green vapor around this flying machine, and there were some translucent windows that I looked in, and I could see some kind of greenish creatures in there. Do you believe that? No, in reality, I never did see it. Never got even close to it. Now, one other time, I was training a guy, giving him an instrument check on instruments in a T-33. That's the 2-seat F-80 over at Grissom Air Force Base. We flew the GCA. Guy did a good job. And the radar called me up, the GCA operator said, hey, we got a UFO up over LaPorte, Indiana. You want to go investigate? I said, yeah, let's do it. So I took over the aircraft in the front end, and I was kind of low enough on fuel, I could get that T-bird up to 40,000. And we climbed up over LaPorte, 40,000 feet, and probably maybe 2,000 feet above me. I looked up there, and here was a great big black balloon. Had a rope coming down with a box on it. So apparently it became identified, so it wasn't a UFO anymore. I told that back to the radar outfit, and they piped it into the radio that the UFO's been identified. So in reality, I've never seen a UFO. And if anybody says they have, you might check them out. Because there's a lot of bull being slung along those lines. Okay, let me see. Oh, one thing, you're getting old if you've got aircraft in a museum. Wright-Patterson, there's an F-94C under the port wing of a B-36 in the Cold War hangar, and it's 054. I've got that in my logbook. I got about 15 hours in that rascal. Up in Fort Wayne, on the pedestal at the Coliseum, there's an F-84F 513. And I got 20 hours in my logbook on that one. So, hey, are you getting old when planes you actually flew are in a museum? Okay, I'll get summarized here. Well, this is a good tale. Hey, this is true, too. Any fighter pilots in here? Well, I guess I can say about anything, can't I? We had to go to Moody Air Force Base 5 weeks out of every year to fire rockets, to actually fire rockets. We had a B-26, I think, pulled a line a mile long with a target on it. They weren't taking any chances because we were firing, live rockets at this rag. But anyway, I had to go back and get another aircraft. And I took a B-25 and went back to Otis from southern Georgia. Stayed at my house where I lived. Next morning I told my wife, Carolyn, I said, hey, you get a chance, I never get a chance, an opportunity like this to take you flying in a jet plane. Would you like to do it? She said, yeah. So we went out the hangar, got her in a flight suit, helmet like this, stuck her hair up in the helmet, and made her carry her own parachute. But put her in the back seat of the F-94C, where the radar observer is, strapped her in, and we had a tech sergeant starting us with the auxiliary power unit, APU, and he was just grinning from ear to ear. He knew that wasn't a guy at the back end of that airplane. And these are times when there were no women in the Air Force then to speak of. I mean, well, they had World War II, they had ferry pilots, but there were very few women, not unlike it is now. But anyway, we took off. No problem. I had a little problem on the trim tab, but that was just a cannon bug problem. I was doing a test hop before I could take this thing cross country. I climbed up with a burner climb real fast. That plane, back in the early 50s, you could make 40,000 feet in about 8 minutes. And that was pretty good back then. Of course, now it's much faster. But anyway, I shouldered Cape Cod from outside the aircraft, all in one spot. And I let down. I didn't leave her there very long because she had not been through altitude chamber course. So I got down to about 10,000, did a couple easy rolls, no G-forces. When you pull G's, that's what makes people sick, and then you got to clean up the aircraft. So now we took in. I thought, if I ever have a landing gear problem, boy, there's a time to do it. So I came in about 350 on initial, pitched out, not too hard on the G's, rolled out, put the garbage down at 180. Coming down final, touched down, pulled the drag chute, came out, into the runway, jettisoned the drag chute, taxied in, shut down. Boy, we got it made. So Caroline got her out of the aircraft. I said, you got to carry your own parachute, and you got to walk like a man. So we did get away with that. One other thing briefly, Eglin Firepower demonstration, I was in that, and I had a problem with my rockets. So I had 12 rockets in each pod, 24 in the nose, and the rocks blew about 20% of my nose off. So I was going to eject. I gave him a mayday. Radio burned out, and I went up north to the auxiliary field and landed there. And came in pretty hot, pulled the drag chute, it's going too fast, came loose, but I got it stopped, and ran over, it was burning, I had an HE rocket right in front of me. When I ran away from the airplane, there was one down below me, went up to the sergeant there washing his dog, and the sergeant, I said, "Sergeant, there's F-94C on your flight line on fire. Sergeant, it's your airplane." Now, let me give you one more thing on F-84s, and then I'll close this thing up. We transitioned in F-84Fs up to the Air National Guard, where we, flew F-86As and Es. Man, we did gunnery up at summer camp and so forth. But finally, we got into F-84Fs, the Super Hog. This was the aircraft, if you didn't get unstick at 165 knots, it would never fly. It'd just plow air right off the end of the runway. We were a special delivery outfit, which means we carried atomic weapons. The Mach 9 bomb. And there's a method of delivering that bomb that's totally different. Over-the-shoulder bombing and toss bombing. We'd pull up before G pull up and toss it. And there's other times we'd come over the target and do half of a Cuban 8. We got upside down, the bomb came off, went up above us, we went down, did a half roll over the treetops, half a Cuban 8, got out of there, and the bomb went down and exploded about 1,100 feet up. Now, we had to see a shrink once a year to be sure, we weren't getting funny, that we get mad at Mayor Ballard, and decide to blow up Indianapolis, So they watched us. How many World War II vets do we have in here? Okay. Well, I just want to say this. I want to thank you guys for winning that compound war. For several reasons, I wouldn't have got to fly a jet plane, and then too, it was a very big job, very, very well done. And I think everybody will have a hand for these World War II vets. In closing, I had the pleasure of going over to Europe in July with Andy Anderson, Denise, and Andy Falk, and who else went there in here? I guess that's the one. But anyway, we got a good tour of Omaha Beach. And believe me, unlike it was in June 6th, 1944, it was real peaceful. There were some nice looking ladies walking in teeny bikinis. So with that, I'm closing. Any brief, quick questions?
Yeah. Can I borrow your helmet to put in the back of my car?
Well, about $500. Well, any other questions? I'll turn this thing back to David here so we get you out of here. But I had some more funny things, but we'll talk about that later. Thank you. Thank you.